I'm Heather, a 32-year-old woman living in Virginia and working as an accountant. I met my husband Mike 9 years ago through some mutual friends. He currently works in a field that requires him to be on call. This means that he is constantly traveling. Although we don't spend a lot of time together, we're still very happy with each other. Mike always makes sure to get me something when he comes back from one of his business trips, and I always make sure we have reservations at a nice restaurant for a date. It has been tough, but it has all felt worth it. Never in any relationship had I felt so safe and loved. I guess you could compare our relationship to those that you see in the movies. We were madly and deeply in love with each other. We always had each other's backs. My problems were his and vice versa, which is why this incident confused and hurt me to such a large extent. It all started 2 weeks ago. My husband Mike was called on duty again. He would need to spend 6 days in the next city. It was a good 10-hour drive from our place. I was a little sad because Mike had only just come back home 5 days ago from a week-long business trip, and he was going back again. Sensing my upset mood, Mike came over to me and wrapped me in a tight and comforting hug. "I can't believe you're leaving again so soon, Mike. It feels like we just had you back home." "I know, babe. I hate being away from you too, but duty calls and I have to go. It's part of the job." "I understand that, baby, but it's been so hard lately. You're always on these trips and I miss you so much. I need you here with me." "I miss you too, darling. Believe me. I wish I could be here more often, but you know how demanding my work can be. It's not easy for me either." "I just worry about you. These trips, the long hours, the stress, it's taking a toll on you, and I can't help but feel like I'm being left behind." "My love, you are never left behind. You're always in my thoughts, no matter where I am. I love you, and I'll always come back to you. You're my anchor, my home." "I love you too, sweetheart. But sometimes I need more than just words. I need your presence, your support. I need to know that I'm a priority in your life." "You are a priority, I promise. When I come back, I'll make it up to you. We'll have quality time together, just the two of us. We'll reconnect and make sure our bond stays strong." "I hope so, because right now, it feels like I'm fading into the background. I need to feel loved and cared for, not just when you're physically here, but every day. You'll always be loved. I'll work on finding a better balance, I promise. We'll figure this out together, and I'll do whatever it takes to make you happy." "Thank you. That's all I ask for. Your love, your presence, and our happiness. Let's make it happen, no matter the distance between us." "We will. I'm here for you, always." Feeling a little better, I helped Mike pack and kissed him goodbye. I then crawled into bed and fell asleep, feeling just a little under the weather. I just chalked it up to tiredness from work and being upset at Mike's leaving. The next day, I woke up with a couple of sniffles and a slightly itchy throat, so I took all the medication I needed to take to prevent it, along with some good home remedies to patch me up. I went to work and came back home feeling much worse. I literally passed out on my bed. When I finally regained consciousness, I realized that something was seriously wrong. My body felt heavy, as if weighed down by an invisible force. Every movement was a Herculean effort, and a dull ache pulsed through my entire being. It was as if the energy within me had been drained, leaving behind a hollow shell. The sniffles and itchy throat from the previous day had transformed into a full-blown assault on my respiratory system. Each breath was a struggle, accompanied by wheezing and a persistent cough that racked my weakened frame. The home remedies and over-the-counter medications I had relied on earlier seemed ineffective against this relentless onslaught. I mustered what little strength I had and forced myself to go to work, determined not to let this illness defeat me. But the moment I stepped through the office doors, exhaustion washed over me like a tidal wave. My limbs felt like lead, and my mind struggled to focus on even the simplest of tasks. My boss gave me the day off and told me to come back when I was better. By the time I made it back home, I was completely drained, physically and emotionally. My body screamed for rest, and I obliged, collapsing onto bed with a bone-deep weariness. As I drifted in and out of consciousness, the illness continued its relentless assault on my body. The once familiar comfort of my bed became a battleground where fever raged and chills coursed through my veins. Each waking moment was met with a renewed sense of weakness, as if my body was waging a losing war against an invisible enemy. In my daze, I managed to call Mike. I needed him by my side right now because there was no way I was going to be able to take care of myself. I felt way too weak to even get up. Mike, I can't do this alone. I'm so sick. I need you here with me. Please just come back home. I can't take care of myself right now. Babe, I wish I could, but I can't leave work right now. You know how demanding my job is, and they need me here. I'm sorry, but I can't come back. Can't you see how much I need you? This isn't just some minor illness. I'm scared, Mike. I feel weak. And I don't know what's happening to me. How can you prioritize work over your own wife's well-being? It's not about prioritizing work over you. It's about fulfilling my responsibilities. I have deadlines, meetings, and commitments that I can't just walk away from. I have to think about the bigger picture. The bigger picture? What about our marriage, Mike? What about the vows we took to be there for each other in sickness and in health? This is when I need you the most, and you're choosing work over me? I'm not choosing work over you. I'm trying to balance everything. I can't just abandon my job whenever something comes up. You have to understand that. Understand? Understand that my husband can't be bothered to be here when I'm suffering? Understand that your career takes precedence over my well-being? No, I can't understand that. It's not fair, and it's not how a marriage should work. You're being unfair, Heather. You're making it seem like I don't care, but that's not true. I care about you. But I have responsibilities. I can't just drop everything. Well, it's clear where your priorities lie. I needed you, and you let me down. I hope you never have to feel as abandoned and betrayed as I do right now. Goodbye, Mike. Baby, please. Feeling utterly betrayed, I hung up the phone, tears streaming down my face. It was as if our once unbreakable bond had been shattered into irreparable fragments. I couldn't fathom how the person I loved and trusted the most could turn his back on me in my time of need. This belief washed over me as if I couldn't comprehend the reality of his response. How could the man I loved and trusted turn his back on me in such a vulnerable moment? Anger surged through my veins, fueled by the injustice of it all. How dare he prioritize his own health and fears over my well-being? The very foundation of our relationship seemed to crumble beneath me, and I struggled to make sense of his actions. Confusion clouded my mind as I grappled with conflicting thoughts. I questioned the depth of Mike's love for me, wondering if his concern for his own well-being overshadowed his commitment to our partnership. Doubt seeped into my heart, eroding the trust that had once been the bedrock of our relationship. In my desperation, I reached out to my best friend, Emma. She had always been there for me, a constant source of support and love. Through choked sobs, I explained the situation to her, pouring out my frustration and hurt. Without hesitation, she reassured me that she would be by my side, taking care of me in Mike's absence. Emma went above and beyond to take care of me. She made sure I had everything I needed, from preparing meals to getting my medications. Her dedication to my well-being was unwavering. But her care went beyond just the physical stuff. Emma was there to listen and provide emotional support. She was my sounding board, lending a sympathetic ear as I vented my frustrations. Her presence alone brought me comfort and reassurance. She also boosted my spirits with her humor and laughter, reminding me that joy still existed despite my struggles. Emma's unwavering belief in my strength and resilience gave me the confidence to face whatever challenges came my way. I tried to let go of the hurt I felt and tried to instead focus on recovering. 2 days later, I was only getting worse. Emma ended up taking me to the ER and I got admitted into the hospital. After running extensive tests on me for hours, the doctor told me that my sickness was not just a regular flu, but rather a much more debilitating respiratory illness that required immediate attention. The doctor also informed me that my emergency contact, my husband, Mike, was called, but he did not pick up. As I lay in the hospital bed, my body weak and my spirit shattered, a mix of emotions swirled within me. The pain from my illness had intensified, and I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of disappointment and abandonment. How could Mike, my supposed life partner, fail to answer the call when I needed him the most? I yearned for the comfort and support that only a spouse could provide, but Mike was nowhere to be found. Anger simmered beneath the surface, fueled by the overwhelming sense of betrayal. How could he turn a blind eye to my distress? The person I had trusted with my life had abandoned me in my darkest hour. It was a betrayal that cut deep, leaving me questioning the foundation of our relationship. Confusion also clouded my thoughts. I couldn't comprehend how someone who had once shown such love and dedication could become so callous. It seemed incomprehensible that the person I had built a life with could turn his back on me when I needed him the most. But amidst the anger and confusion, there was also a deep sense of sadness. A profound disappointment washed over me as I realized that the person I had once relied on for strength and support had let me down. The loss of trust and the shattered illusions of our perfect love story weighed heavily on my heart. Emma walked into my room, which pulled me out of my thoughts. She looked confused and dazed. Worried, I asked her what was wrong. Emma told me that she had seen my husband, Mike, in the hospital. For a second, all the negative thoughts in my head vanished and my heart immediately felt lighter. However, the look on Emma's face made my stomach drop. Well, where is Mike? About that. He seemed in a rush and went in the opposite direction. What do you mean? Where did he go? I asked the receptionist and he told me that Mike went to the maternity ward. His girlfriend just went into labor. His girlfriend? But he's married to me. How is that even possible? I don't know, Heather. It doesn't make any sense. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you further. No, it's not your fault, Em. It's just, I never expected this. How could he betray me like this? I wish I had more answers for you. I can't even imagine what you're going through right now, but please know that I'm here for you no matter what. Thank you. Your support means the world to me. I just need some time to process all of this. I felt a mix of rage and hurt, a potent cocktail of emotions that threatened to consume me. How could Mike have deceived me for so long? How could he have carried on a secret affair while I lay in that hospital bed fighting for my health and hoping for his support? The betrayal was like a betrayal on top of a betrayal, leaving me feeling like a fool for not seeing the signs earlier. Grief washed over me, mourning the loss of the marriage I had once cherished. The pain of betrayal cut deep, leaving scars that would take time to heal. At that moment, the rose-colored glasses shattered, revealing the harsh reality of my crumbling marriage. The trust I had placed in Mike had been shattered, replaced by a sense of profound disappointment. The realization that our love story had been tarnished by infidelity tore at the fabric of my being. As I pieced together the puzzle of his absences and the lies, anger and sadness mingled within me. I was enraged by his deceit, but I also mourned the loss of the life I thought we had built together. The dreams we had shared, the promises we had made, they all seemed like distant echoes of a time when love and loyalty still held. But amidst the pain and devastation, a newfound determination emerged. I refused to be a victim of Mike's infidelity. The fire of revenge burned brighter within me, fueling my resolve to reclaim my power and find a way to rebuild my life without him. I would not allow his betrayal to define me. With each passing moment, the pieces fell into place, forming a clearer picture of the reality I had been living in. And as painful as it was to acknowledge, it also ignited a spark of strength within me. I was no longer the naive woman who had blindly trusted her husband's excuses. I was a survivor, ready to embark on a journey of self-discovery and retribution. As I lay in that hospital bed, nursing my broken heart and battered body, a plan began to take shape within the recesses of my mind. The pain and betrayal I had endured at the hands of my husband, Mike, ignited a fire of vengeance that burned brighter with each passing moment. With a newfound determination, I resolved to turn the tables on him, to make him feel the same pain and betrayal that had consumed me. Revenge became my driving force, and I carefully crafted a devious plan to ensure he would pay for his actions. After I had recovered sufficiently, the doctor deemed me well enough to leave and gave me a boatload of medications to take. In the days that I had been in the hospital, not once had Mike, the supposed love of my life, called me. The rage in me only continued to burn brighter. My mind reeled with all the possible ways I could exact revenge on him. Thoughts of revenge drove me to recover faster. Once out of the hospital, Emma continued to stay with me. She was there not only to look after my physical health, but to also support me mentally and emotionally. She was just as eager to get revenge on Mike as I was. Together, we brainstormed plans for revenge. Eventually, we settled on one. Step one was collecting evidence of Mike's affair and compiling it into one folder. Given Mike's frequent work trips, I thought it would be harder to find any evidence, but I was easily disproved. A quick look into his bank records showed me just enough evidence. The affair had been going on for years. How had I been so naive? Why haven't I ever questioned it? Why wasn't it a red flag for me when Mike would habitually evade all questions regarding his business trips? I also looked into his iCloud and found an entire folder dedicated to his affair partner. I opened it only to find out that his affair partner was his secretary. Everything I was finding out felt like punch after another punch in the gut. I wanted to throw up with every new piece of information, but I knew I needed to remain strong and follow through with the plan. Step 2 was filing the divorce papers and moving out. Emma offered me her place to stay. She was set to move to another state in a couple of weeks thanks to a promotion at work. She reasoned with me by telling me she needed a roommate anyway. I moved everything that belonged to me out of the house along with the things that I had paid more for. You see, Mike made half of my salary, so we proportionally paid for things together. So unless there was something that he had fully and completely bought, I took everything else. Never have I ever been so grateful to have kept our finances separate. I got in touch with a good divorce lawyer that wrote up a pretty ironclad agreement demanding alimony from Mike on account of his adultery and negligence. Step 3 was waiting for Mike to get back and be greeted by an empty house and divorce papers. This happened 2 days later. He spammed my phone with calls and texts, anxious about my whereabouts. I was tempted to answer because he seemed so genuine and desperate, but Emma stopped me. He keeps calling and texting me. He sounds so desperate, like he genuinely wants to talk. Maybe I should answer. Heather, I understand that it's difficult, but remember why we're doing this. He hurt you deeply, and this is your chance to regain control. Don't let him manipulate your emotions. What if he wants to fix things? You deserve better than someone who betrayed you. Stay strong and stay focused. We're doing what's best for you. You're right. I need to stay strong. I won't let him reel me back in. Thank you for reminding me of that. Anytime. We're in this together, and I'll support you every step of the way. She was right. I couldn't get sucked in right now when Mike had hurt me to the highest degree possible. Instead, I carried on with the plan. Step 4 was spreading the word. I emailed Mike's family the file containing the evidence of Mike's infidelity. My email was titled, "Congratulations on a new grandchild." Unfortunately, his father is a piece of crap. I also emailed Mike's superiors and the HR department the file. I hoped that Mike only received the worst consequences. Step 5 was making myself disappear from Mike's life. I blocked his number and discontinued my number. I blocked him and his secretary from all my social media platforms and turned all my accounts private so he would have no access to me. I found another better paying job in the state that Emma and I were moving to, so I quit my current job. Emma and I moved to another state, and I finally got to start over again. In the weeks that followed, the results of my plan came to life. The evidence I have compiled of his affair, meticulously organized in a folder, became a weapon that shattered his world. First, his job was not spared from the consequences of his actions. The email I had sent to his superiors and HR department exposing his infidelity led to an internal investigation. It didn't take long for the truth to come to light, and both Mike and his secretary were promptly fired. The company couldn't afford to be associated with such unethical behavior. But the repercussions didn't end there. Word spread like wildfire, reaching his family and friends. The email I had sent to his family, titled with biting sarcasm, caused shockwaves within their circle. The truth of Mike's betrayal became a bitter pill to swallow, and his own family disowned him. The relationships he once cherished crumbled, leaving him isolated and alone. As for the divorce proceedings, my ironclad agreement worked in my favor. The evidence of Mike's adultery and negligence, combined with the demand for alimony, left him with little room to maneuver. The court recognized the weight of his transgressions and granted me the financial support I deserved. With each consequence that befell him, I felt a surge of victory and vindication. The sense of justice served, provided closure, and a renewed sense of empowerment. I had taken control of my life, dismantling the web of deceit that had ensnared me for far too long. Mike's life crumbled around him, stripped of the facade he had carefully maintained. The consequences he faced served as a reminder that actions have consequences, and the choices we make can come back to haunt us. But more importantly, the victory I tasted was not just about punishing Mike, it was about reclaiming my own worth and finding peace within myself. I had shed the burden of his betrayal, emerging stronger and more determined than ever before. The sense of triumph I felt was not rooted in revenge alone, but in the rediscovery of my resilience and the rebuilding of my life on my own terms. In the end, I stood tall, a survivor of heartbreak and betrayal, ready to embrace the future with newfound strength and an unwavering belief in my own worth. The journey had been arduous, but the victory was sweet, reminding me that I was capable of overcoming even the darkest moments of my life. Hey there, I'm Matt, and I'm 31 years old. Many people refer to me as one of those guys who get away with anything. No matter how much of an annoyance I can be, I still manage to get blessed, like I have some good luck or something. And before, I wouldn't believe them. I just thought that they were haters. But also what happened to me a couple of months ago, I'm starting to believe that they were right. Maybe I'm a walking, talking beacon of good luck. This is the story of how I won in the end. As usual, it all started with my sister Marie. You see, I was never meant to be the responsible one. In the cosmic lottery of life, my twin sister Marie seemed to have drawn all the good cards, leaving me with the chaotic, reckless ones. I didn't mind it though, because it meant that people wouldn't mess with me. Marie was the family-oriented type, always spreading kindness and joy wherever she went. Meanwhile, I was content with my bachelor lifestyle, carefree and unattached. Life was good until it wasn't. 10 years ago, Marie adopted a little boy named Henry. He was a bright light in our lives, and I loved being an uncle. But tragedy has a way of shattering even the strongest bonds. It was a devastating blow when Marie was killed in a car accident. Losing her felt like losing half of myself. There's an undeniable hole in my heart that wouldn't ever be filled. The world became a darker place, and I was left grappling with grief and the sudden responsibility of caring for young Henry. But you see, I never imagined would become his guardian. I remember the day Henry came into my custody vividly. I expected other family members with children or even my parents to step up and offer their support. But what I received instead was a cold shoulder and cruel rejection. "You don't want Henry? He's family, for God's sake." My mom crossed her arms, her tone icy. "Matt, we have our own lives to live. We can't just drop everything to take care of a child we barely know. It's not fair on us or Henry." "Barely know?" "He's been in our lives for 10 years. "You know what I mean, Matt. Henry is adopted." He said it as if he had some deadly disease. "You're acting like taking care of a child is the easiest thing. Since you feel so strongly about it, why don't you take him in?" Honestly, I didn't think that I was even a contender for being Henry's guardian. I mean, you know my lifestyle. I have zero experience with kids. I thought that my cousins like Naomi or Tia would take him. They have kids around his age, so why wouldn't it be easier for them? Nope, trust me. I already tried asking them, and they said they didn't want him. And what about you two? You already have experience raising 2 kids at the same time from birth. Why is it so difficult to take in this 11-year-old boy? We're too old for this. Matt, raising a kid at our age? It's not what we signed up for. Maybe it was our biological child we would consider. My frustration swelled within me. How could they be so callous? So quick to discard a child in need? I really didn't think that I'd be raising a kid, but from the responses I was hearing, I definitely needed to take Henry in my care. Otherwise, he'd end up in unloving arms. He's Marie's son, your grandson. How can you turn your back on him just like that? What kind of family are we? My mom sighed, her tone condescending. Matt, we have our priorities, our responsibilities. We can't take on the burden of raising this child. It's hard raising an adopted kid, you know. I clenched my fists, my anger simmering beneath the surface. Burden? Henry's not a burden. He's a child who just lost his mother. He needs us, his family, to be there for him. And despite your lame excuse about him being adopted, I'd like you to know that he is part of this family wholly. But my pleas fell on deaf ears. The rest of our family members present at the time shared the same sentiments as my parents, unwilling to help the child. At that moment, I made a decision. I couldn't bear to see Henry being cast aside and rejected by those who should have embraced him with open arms. If no one else would step up, then it would be up to me. I would take him in and give him the love and stability he deserved. Turning to my parents, my voice firm, I declared, If no one else is willing to do what's right, then I will. Henry will live with me. Matt, I was joking earlier when I said you should try and take him in. You don't have any experience raising kids. What are you going to feed him? Kids can't survive on pizza, you know. Contrary to what you might think, Dad, I'm able to handle responsibilities, okay? I may not have planned for this, but I won't let Henry suffer because of it, especially if none of you want to take care of him. I will learn, adapt, and do whatever it takes to be the parent he needs. But you don't know the first thing about raising a child. You're right, I don't. But what would you rather have me do? Sit on the sidelines and watch Henry be taken in by a family that doesn't love him? Just like you guys? I may not know the first thing about raising a child, but I'll figure it out. I won't let him down like the rest of you have. Henry, oblivious to the weight of the conversation, wandered into the room, his eyes red from crying. He clung to me, seeking comfort and solace amid his confusion. At that moment, I knew I had made the right decision. I would protect him, love him, and show him that family doesn't always mean sharing the same blood. It means being there for one another no matter what. I vowed to protect Henry and give him the love and stability he deserved. No one, not even our own flesh and blood, had the right to belittle him or dismiss him as anything less than family. The time had come for me to take a stand and show them the strength and resilience that lay dormant beneath my carefree exterior. The days after Marie's passing turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. After 3 months of living together, Henry and I fell into a rhythm. He was such a cool kid. I felt like I was hanging out with my best friends at times. I was excited to teach him all of the things he needed to know, like how to shave, how to change a tire, how to cook some basic meals, and most importantly, how to pull the ladies. He was a natural, by the way. One evening, as we were playing a game of catch in the backyard, Henry paused and looked me up with wide eyes. Matt, do you think Mama can see us from up there? I tossed the ball gently and pondered his question. Well, buddy, some people believe that the ones we love never truly leave us. Maybe she's watching over us, cheering us on and sending us her love. Henry smiled, his innocence lighting up his face. I hope so. I love her. And she loves you, Henry, more than words express. Together we continued our game, the sun setting in the distance, and that moment I realized that despite the challenges we had faced, Henry and I had built an unbreakable bond. He was a tough kid, and honestly he reminded me a lot of myself. Maybe that's why we got along so well. Although he'd been staying with me for 6 months at that point, I realized that I didn't really know much about his background. And that's something that a parent needs to know, right? So there I was on a mission to uncover Henry's backstory before the adoption and be way better parent than my parents. I mean, seriously, who did they think they were, treating an innocent kid like he was disposable? I was hoping that my parents would feel awful for what they said once they realized that Henry and I were actually thriving as a family unit. But what ended up happening in the end was way, way better. I made my way to the adoption agency that Henry was originally in, ready to dig up some information and find out everything there was to know about Henry's biological parents. You might be wondering why Marie didn't do this or have this information on deck, and honestly, I don't know. It's a shame that I can ask her now, but I suspect that she just wanted Henry to have a clean slate, because his parents must have given him up for reason, right? And as a parent, you should get all of the details, just to be sure. See, I'm not so bad at this parenting thing. Turns out Henry's parents, Sally and Justin, were taken from him in a freaking plane crash. Can you believe it? Talk about heartbreaking and super ironic, almost spookily so. Anyways, poor Henry ended up in the care of his aunt, Veronica, but she, for whatever reason, gave him up for adoption. Man, life can be tough. Being the ever-conscious, ever-adventurous person I was determined to find out the reason why she did what she did. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I set out to find Veronica. It wasn't easy, let me tell you. I had to play detective, making endless phone calls and stalking the depths of the internet. But finally, I tracked her down like a champ. Go me! I texted her on Facebook, briefly explaining who I was, and clearly she didn't think I was some random creep because she was willing to talk on the phone. When I called her up, I could feel the tension in the air. "Hey there, Veronica." "Oh, hello. What can I do for you?" "Look, I know this might come as a surprise, but I recently found out about Henry's background, about his parents." "How did you find out?" "I did some digging, Veronica. I needed to know more about Henry's past, where he came from, and I also need to know why you didn't take him in." That was a tragedy. I never wanted to give Henry up. I was devastated. I can only imagine how difficult it was for you, losing your sister and brother-in-law like that, and then having to make such a tough decision. It must have been unbearable. It was. I loved them so much, and I loved Henry, but I was so overwhelmed, so lost. I didn't know how to take care of him all on my own. I thought it would be best for him to be with a family who could provide for him and give him the love and stability he needed. I understand, Veronica, and let me tell you, Henry is doing great. He's such an incredible kid. Despite losing his mom, he's strong and resilient. As his guardian, I think he deserves to know his roots, his story, and at least eventually. Do you think so? Do you think he'll understand? I think he will, Veronica. Kids have a way of surprising us with their resilience. He's already shown so much strength, and knowing about his biological family could give him a sense of identity, a connection. He needs to know where he comes from to honor his parents' memory. I won't tell him anything now because I don't think he's ready. But I think I need to do my due diligence as a parent. You're right. He deserves to know. I'm so grateful that you're there for him, Matt. I can tell that you genuinely care. I do, Veronica. Henry is family, and family looks out for each other. I promise you I'll always be there for him, and I hope we can stay in touch too. We can support each other through this journey. Thank you, Matt. I believe you. It's just hearing about Henry, about how he's doing. It brings back so many emotions. I miss them, Sarah and David, so much. I know, Veronica, and I can't begin to understand your pain, but we'll get through this together. Henry will grow up knowing about his parents, and you'll always have a place in his life. Thank you for reaching out, for caring about Henry, and for letting me be a part of his life. I never expected this, but I'm grateful. It's my pleasure, Veronica. Family sticks together no matter what. We'll honor Sarah and David's memory and make sure Henry knows how loved he is. As the tears flowed, a shared understanding passed between us. We may have started as strangers, but now we were connected by the bond of love for Henry and the desire to give him the best life possible. I didn't tell Henry everything just yet. I didn't think it was wise to drop such a huge bombshell on him after he already received one, but I did eventually meet up with Veronica. We talked for hours trying to get to know each other better, and at some point, Veronica dropped a bombshell on me. In one of our meetings, she said, "Matt, I need to tell you something. I'm very wealthy. Over the years, I've built a successful business empire, and after getting to know you and seeing the pictures and videos of Henry growing and thriving, I'm ready to participate in his life, even if I can't be physically present right now." So, how much money are we talking about here? Are you going to make me a millionaire? Well, maybe not a millionaire, but let's just say I'll be providing a substantial financial support. I want to essentially pay child support for Henry. I can comfortably contribute $10,000 a month, if that's okay with you. I almost choked on my coffee. 10K? Geez, Veronica, I thought you were joking. Are you actually that rich? Yep. Wait, if you're that rich, then how come I didn't see any online traces of your wealth and success? I like to live a quiet life, and I work very hard to ensure that I don't have much of a digital footprint, which is why I was surprised to find out that you found me. If you search for my business, you'll see that I'm telling you the truth. As she said, I searched up her business, and it turns out that it was well on the rise to becoming a multi-million-dollar company. I got lightheaded from all the signs of wealth and luxury I was seeing. Wow, that's incredible, Veronica. You must be a really smart woman, and $10,000 per month is more than generous of you. I never expected anything like this. But why? Why are you doing this? Part of the reason I gave Henry up for adoption was because I was on the brink of changing my life forever. If I had taken him in, I wouldn't have had the financial means I have now. But seeing Henry grow up and the love and care you've given him, I can't help but wish I had made a different choice. This is my way of paying you back and ensuring that Henry has everything he needs. That means a lot, Veronica. I've been doing my best to provide for Henry, but I won't deny that the financial aspect has been a challenge. This will make a huge difference in our lives. I'm glad to hear that, Matt, but I also want to make sure I'm doing what's right for Henry. Is there anyone else who has been there for him, anyone else who deserves financial support? At this moment, I knew that I could have lied and said that his grandparents were heavily involved in his life, also contributing to his growth and success. But not only would that be disingenuous, it would be stupid. I could have done my parents a solid, getting them extra cash, but I saw an opportunity to do what was right and just. Honestly, Veronica, I'm the only one who stepped up after his mom passed away. Marie was the only one who cared for him. The rest of our family, well, they turned their backs on him. I didn't know what I was expecting her answer to be, but it wasn't this. In that case, I'll add another $10,000 per month to support you and Henry. You've taken on the responsibility and provided him with the love and care he deserves. I want to help in any way I can. I started calling her crazy for her proposals. How could she pay me, little old me, $20,000 a month? I swear I saw stars at that point. Even though I told her the $10,000 was enough, she insisted that she paid me the extra money, saying it was the least she could do. I truly regret not being there for Henry when he needed me, but now we can make things right and ensure he has the best life possible. I hope one day when the time is right, I'll have the chance to meet him and be a part of his life. Over time, thanks to the monthly payments from Veronica, things started looking up for Henry and me. We moved into a much nicer place and I could finally buy some cool stuff for the both of us. When my parents noticed the change, they couldn't hold back their curiosity any longer and confronted me about it. So I spilled the beans and told them everything. I explained who Veronica was, how we met, and that she was sending us a fat check every month to help us out. But when they heard about the money, their eyes lit up with dollar signs, and they wanted their piece of the pie. Well, sorry, not sorry. I made it clear that the money was meant for Henry and me, especially Henry. It was all about securing his future and making sure he had a shot at success. But man, did things get heated. What makes you think that you deserve this money? Well, Really, Matt? You're going to treat us like this? Yep. After what you said about Henry 8 months ago, you think you deserve a slice of the pie? You're crazy. How dare you? You're our son. You're meant to take care of us as we get older, or at the very least, cut us in on that sweet deal. Over my dead body. The both of you aren't going to touch this money, you hear? You're greedy. And selfish. Yeah, well, you're cold-hearted and bitter. The both of you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to the life that I'm enjoying with Henry. It was a messy argument filled with frustration and disappointment. Our relationship has been on the rocks ever since. Frankly, I don't care. My priority is Henry and his well-being, not their entitled demands. With the money from Veronica, I got smart. I didn't want to blow it all on dumb stuff. Nah, I decided to invest it wisely. I talked to some financial experts and explored different options. My goal was to build up Henry's credit and bank accounts so he'd have a solid foundation when he comes of age. I wanted to set him up for a bright future where he can chase his dreams without being held back by financial worries. Seeing Henry grow and thrive fills me with pride. I know that by making smart financial moves and investing in his future, I'm getting revenge on the crappy circumstances that dealt him a tough hand. It's my way of sticking it to a system that failed to support him when he needed it the most. So yeah, our family relationships might be strained, but I don't give a damn. I'm committed to securing Henry's future and making sure he has every opportunity he deserves. Together, we'll rise above the negativity and create a legacy of love and resilience, honoring the memory of my beautiful baby sister Marie. I'm glad my parents got what they deserved, which was nothing. I'm glad that I reached out to Veronica and significantly improved my life, but most of all, I'm glad that Henry is doing okay. One day, soon, I'll have to tell him about where all this money is coming from. But for now, I just want to see him happy. My name is Lauren and I'm 24 years old. Let me tell you about my roller coaster journey. I've had a rocky history with the foster care system. You see, my biological parents were deep into drugs and their addiction consumed their lives. As a result, I was left in the hands of the state, bouncing from one foster home to another. To say I resented my parents would be an understatement. They abandoned me, neglected me, and shattered any chance of a normal childhood. I carried that anger and hurt deep within me for years. I didn't even attend my biological mother's funeral when she passed away, as I couldn't find it in me to say a final goodbye to the person who had brought me into such a chaotic world. But then, at the age of 10, a glimmer of hope shone through the darkness. I was adopted by Tia and Xavier, the most amazing parents a girl could ask for. They opened their hearts and their home to me, and I became a part of their loving family. They taught me the meaning of unconditional love, provided stability, and showed me that I was worthy of all the happiness in the world. I owe everything I am today to them, and my love for them knows no bounds. When I was 16, tragedy struck once again. My dear mom, Tia, passed away, leaving a void in our lives that seemed impossible to fill. But amidst the grief, something unexpected happened. My biological father, Glenn, resurfaced from the shadows and expressed a desire to turn his life around. It seemed he had finally hit rock bottom and found the strength to seek help and get clean. My dad, Xavier, approached me and asked if I wanted to see him. It was a daunting decision, but curiosity and a tiny spark of hope led me to say yes. We visited Glenn at the rehabilitation center and I cautiously observed his progress. To my surprise, he appeared genuinely committed to his recovery and building a better life. It was a glimmer of redemption that stirred conflicting emotions within me. Time passed and Glenn completed his 2-year stint in rehab. By the time I turned 18, we decided to give our relationship another chance. After all, he was my biological father, and part of me longed for a connection with him. We started rebuilding our bond, cautiously navigating through the unfamiliar territory of father and daughter. It wasn't easy, but I believed in the power of forgiveness and second chances. However, as I got to know Glenn better, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. There were moments when he seemed genuine, trying to make amends for the past, but there were also instances when his old demons resurfaced, threatening to pull him back into the dark abyss of addiction. I realized that my desire for a relationship with my biological father was clouded by my yearning for closure, for answers to the questions that haunted me throughout my life. But in the process, I discovered that closure doesn't always come in the form we expect. It doesn't erase the pain or fill the void left by years of neglect. Nonetheless, I tried fostering a positive relationship between us, but that turned out to be a mistake. As time went on, Glenn's true colors began to reveal themselves. Despite his initial efforts to change, he couldn't escape the clutches of his old ways. The addiction that had plagued him before resurfaced, consuming him once again. It was heartbreaking to witness his descent into ugliness and aggression. I tried to be understanding, to give him the benefit of the doubt, hoping that he would find his way back to the path of recovery, but the more I tried, the more he pushed me away with his toxic behavior. It was a painful realization, but I knew I had to protect myself from the negativity and toxicity that he brought into my life. When I turned 21, I made the difficult decision to cut him off completely. I no longer had space in my heart for the hatred and disappointment he had caused. I had to prioritize my well-being and surround myself with positive influences. It was a tough choice, but one that ultimately allowed me to find peace and move forward. Xavier, my adoptive dad, felt a deep sense of remorse for everything I had been through with Glenn. He blamed himself, believing he could have shielded me from the pain and disappointment, but I reassured him that it wasn't his fault. He had given me a stable and loving home, providing the foundation for me to grow and thrive. I made it clear that he was not responsible for the actions of my biological father. One evening, as we sat on the porch enjoying the gentle breeze, Xavier opened up about his feelings of guilt. Tears welled up in his eyes as he expressed his regret for not being able to protect me from the hardships I faced in my early years. I reached out and held his hand, assuring him that he had done more for me than he could ever imagine. Lauren, I can't help but feel so remorseful for introducing Glenn back into your life. I thought he had truly changed, but I was wrong. I'm sorry for the pain and disappointment he brought into your life. Dad, please don't blame yourself. You had no way of knowing how things would turn out. You gave me the opportunity to reconnect with him, and I appreciate that. It was Glenn who let me down, not you. You've always been there for me, supporting and loving me unconditionally. I just wanted you to have a chance to build a relationship with your biological father. I wanted you to experience the bond that I couldn't provide as an adoptive dad. But seeing how things unfolded, I feel responsible for the hurt it caused you. Dad, you've given me more than I could have ever asked for. You've shown me what it truly means to be a parent regardless of blood ties. You've been my rock, my guiding light. Please understand that Glenn's actions are his own. You couldn't have predicted or controlled his choices. You did everything you could to protect me and provide me with a loving home. I am grateful for that. Thank you, Lauren. Your words mean the world to me. I've always wanted the best for you, and it hurts me to see you go through such pain. We can't change the past, Dad. What's important now is that we support each other and focus on the love we share as a family. We've grown stronger together, and we'll continue to do so. Let's leave the past behind us and look toward the future with hope and joy. You're right, Lauren. We have each other, and that's what matters most. I'm so proud of the strong young woman you've become, and I'm grateful to have you as my daughter. We'll navigate this journey together, always supporting and loving each other." Absolutely, Dad. We're in this together, and no matter what challenges we face, we'll overcome them as a family. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Lauren, forever and always. I was so glad that we had this moment of clarity. This was yet another reason for me to believe that blood isn't thicker than water, and that the people who you call family are the ones who have conversations like this with you. Anyways, despite going through a lot of trauma in my childhood, it seemed as though my young adulthood had more promising outcomes as I met Rick. He made me feel so special, and I knew the moment I met him that he was the one for me. It looked like my life was finally turning around, and I was so ready to embrace the wonderful changes that were coming my way. Not too soon afterward, I was about to marry the love of my life, Rick. We had been together for 3 amazing years, filled with love, laughter, and support. He had swept me off my feet, and I knew deep in my heart that he was the one for me. It was during our vacation in Spain that he got down on one knee and proposed, and without hesitation, I said yes. Everything seemed to be falling into place. I was overjoyed at the thought of starting a new chapter in my life, especially because Rick's family was so warm, accepting, and loving. They embraced me as if I had always been a part of their family. It was a stark contrast to the tumultuous relationship I had with Glenn. Rick's family offered a sense of stability and healthy family dynamic that I had always yearned for. But as the day of our wedding approached, I couldn't shake this nagging feeling that something was off. I tried to brush it off as pre-wedding jitters, but deep down, I knew it was more than that. I confided in Rick, and even in my dad, Xavier, expressing my concerns, but they assured me that it was just nerves playing tricks on me. As I stood in front of the mirror, getting ready to walk down the aisle, I took a deep breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I still couldn't ignore the sinking feeling in my gut. Something was wrong. Xavier found me and was ready to lead me down the aisle, but he stopped and said, "Wow, my little girl, all grown up." "Come on, Dad, don't tell me you're going to cry." "I can't help it. It seems like just yesterday I was helping you with your math homework, and now you're here, all grown up and ready to take on the world." "You're going to make me ruin my makeup, Dad." "Are you sure you still want to do this? Say the word and we're out of here." I got the car running. "Dad, you know I want to marry this man." "I know, sweetie. I know that she's proud of you. I know she's looking down at you, and she's beaming." I was so mad at him because I started to cry. And true to what I said before, he made me ruin my makeup. I did my best to fix it, but we were laughing about it the entire time, effectively delaying the program. We made our way outside, and after fist bumping, my dad swung open the grand old church doors to reveal me, in my wedding dress, about to walk down the aisle. As I took a step forward, I heard something. The shrill and drunken voice of a man I once knew. Instantly, my hair stood on end, and my father's paled expression was all the confirmation I needed. "Oh, Lauren!" The wedding guests all halted and tried to peer behind me to see what was happening. And like a bad omen, Glenn was creeping forward, demanding to be witnessed by all. I turned around to face him, my heart pounding in my chest, and there he was. Glenn, my biological father, stood there with an unsettling grin on his face. How did he even find out about my wedding? The sight of him filled me with a mix of anger, fear, and disappointment. I had cut him off completely, and now he dared to show up uninvited, potentially ruining one of the most important days of my life. I knew this was too good to be true. My mind raced, contemplating what to do next. Should I confront him? Should I ignore him and focus on the happiness that awaited me just a few steps away? I looked at Rick, who was at the altar, searching for reassurance. and he sent me a sympathetic glance, implying that he didn't know what to do, but that he got my back no matter what. I then turned to Xavier, who squeezed my hand gently, his eyes filled with understanding. At that moment, I knew I wasn't alone. Rick and Xavier would support me no matter what decision I made. Taking a deep breath, I made a choice. I refused to let Glenn's presence overshadow the joy and love that surrounded me. I would not allow him to taint this special day. With determination in my eyes, I straightened my veil, held my head high, and locked eyes with Xavier. Together, we would face whatever challenges came our way because we were a family, a strong and loving family that had overcome so much. I began walking down the aisle, and the church music awkwardly started up again after stopping. Glenn apparently couldn't take the hint, and he emerged from the shadows, and in full view, he said, "Oh, my baby, why aren't you paying attention to me? Why did you leave me?" To say I was mortified would be an understatement. How could he do something like that so publicly? Up ahead, I saw Rick preparing to make his way down the aisle to perhaps teach my father a lesson, but I sent him a look that told him to stay put. I didn't need this escalating further. Xavier had already turned around to face the beast that threatened to ruin my special day, and as I glanced around the congregation, I could see people whispering and murmuring about how this was all so unprofessional and lowbrow. My blood started to boil. I felt so heated. I turned around and said, "Just what the heck do you think you're doing?" "Baby girl, what do you mean?" "I mean that you're crazy. How dare you come to my wedding and crash it like this, uninvited, and most importantly, unwanted." I couldn't believe my eyes. There he was, stumbling towards me, sloppily drunk and making a complete fool of himself. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd as Glenn crashed my wedding. People stared at him, their judgmental eyes boring into his disheveled appearance. I stepped back, instinctively avoiding his outstretched hand as he clumsily tried to grab onto my dress. The room fell silent except for Glenn's unsteady footsteps and the collective whispers of disbelief. It was clear that he had already caused enough embarrassment for himself. Xavier's voice cut through the tension, filled with anger and frustration. "How dare you come here and ruin this special day with your selfishness?" Glenn, swaying unsteadily, responded with a slurred retort. "It's my right as a father to walk my baby girl down the aisle. How could you not tell me you were getting married?" Anger surged through me as I shouted back, unable to contain my pent-up emotions any longer. "You don't get to claim that right after everything you've done. You abandoned me, treated me horribly, and subjected me to your constant shouting for no reason." Glenn attempted to silence me, his eyes filled with desperation. He harshly whispered so that the crowd couldn't hear. "Don't mention anything about my past. I'm here to do better. These people don't need to know anything." "Trust me, buddy. Everyone here can tell that you're drunk." "You think I'm embarrassing you by exposing the truth?" "Yes." "Oh, you'll feel embarrassed, all right. Everyone deserves to know the kind of man you truly are." I laid bare all the painful memories, exposing him to the drug abuse, the abandonment, and the emotional abuse I had endured due to his insolence. The crowd, once filled with curiosity and shock, now brimmed with anger and disgust towards Glenn. They witnessed the extent of his toxic behavior and the impact it had on my life. Amidst it all, I caught a glimpse of Rick standing on the sidelines, his eyes filled with unwavering support and admiration. He cheered me on silently, his love and belief in me shining through. At that moment, surrounded by the emotions swirling around me, I realized that I had made the right decision, to expose my biological dad in front of everyone. I turned to him to find himself shaking with a mixture of anger and fear. That's not true, Erin." "Erin? That's your name, isn't it?" "How pathetic. You can't even remember your daughter's name." "Whatever. I demand that you let me walk you down the aisle. Right this instant. I'm your father." No, no, you're not. What? You heard me. You're not my father. We might share the same DNA, but trust me, you are the last person I would refer to as a father figure. Xavier is my real father, and I'm going to shout it from the rooftops for everyone to hear because he's been the one who was taking care of me all these years. He's protected and guided me while you were out doing drugs and being reckless. So no, you will not walk me down the aisle. I'm going to have my real father do it. Glenn couldn't seem to understand that I didn't want him. He really thought that he could just waltz his way in here and treat me so horrendously, but he was wrong. I had done a lot of growth since the last time I met him, and although he was used to me taking him back, giving him chance after chance to do better, this time was different. Glenn looked at Xavier with hatred, and eventually his eyes wandered around the crowd, meeting people's looks of disgust with his feelings of embarrassment. He certainly wasn't expecting me to air out his dirty laundry like that, but I did. And I'm glad I did it because I have nothing to be ashamed for. He was the one who abandoned me and abused me, not the other way around. And if he had the gall to make demands to me on my wedding day, then surely he would have the gall to be exposed. But clearly that wasn't the case. Glenn's embarrassment was palpable as the truth still hung heavy in the air. The crowd's disapproval intensified, their scorn pushing him further into isolation and fear. The security guards finally arriving at the scene swiftly escorted Glenn out of the venue, away from the prying eyes of the guests. The cheers and applause that had accompanied my walk down the aisle now echoed through the room, mingling with the sounds of sobbing from those who had been moved by my painful past. I smiled up at Xavier, gratitude filling my heart as he led me towards my future. The warmth of his hand in mine reassured me that I had made the right choice, sticking by my father, who took care of me instead of the father who was related to me. The ceremony proceeded as planned, filled with love and support from our friends and family, despite the debacle that threatened to ruin everything moments prior. But the aftermath of Glenn's actions didn't end there. News quickly spread about his attempt to ruin my wedding, and the community turned against him. Glenn became a social outcast, ostracized for his selfishness and the pain he had caused. It weighed heavily on him, pushing him further into his destructive tendencies. In his shame, he went on a drug bender and disappeared from our lives. So as for Glenn, his actions had consequences. The revelation of his attempt to disrupt our wedding tarnished his reputation. The guilt and shame overwhelmed him and he vanished, leaving behind a void of unanswered questions. His absence only confirmed that I had made the right decision in choosing to be with someone who genuinely loved and supported me. In the midst of it all, I found solace and happiness with Xavier by my side. Our bond grew stronger, and he continued to be the loving and supporting father figure I had always cherished. I was grateful that Glenn was finally out of my life for good, allowing me to embrace the love and stability that Xavier had provided throughout my journey. Rick and I embarked on a new chapter together, building a life filled with love, understanding, and healing. We cherished every moment, grateful for the strength we had gained from overcoming our past. Glenn's absence served as a reminder of the toxic cycle we had broken free from, allowing us to appreciate the peace and happiness we had found. And so, with Glenn's presence serving as a distant memory, I focused on nurturing my relationships, living a life filled with joy and remaining forever grateful for the love and support that surrounded me. Hey y'all, my name's Freddie and I'm 21 years old. Growing up wasn't exactly a fairy tale for me. If you had to sum up my relationship with my dad, Carl, in one word, it would be toxic. We used to be close, but everything changed when he divorced my mom and left us in a pile of financial ruin. It felt like he abandoned me, like I was just an afterthought in his pursuit of a new life of chasing women and cars and whatever else old bachelors do with their lives. After the divorce, my mom, Yasmin, and I struggled for a bit. We went from living a comfortable life to fluctuating between decent stability and barely making ends meet. It was tough watching my mom work long hours to put food on the table and keep a roof over our heads. But somehow she never lost hope. She worked tirelessly trying to turn our situation around. And you know what? She did it. Against all odds, my mom rose like a phoenix from the ashes. She started a small business that eventually grew into a successful company. With her hard work and determination, we went from barely getting by to living a life of comfort. It was incredible to witness her transformation and see her resilience in action. But life had a cruel way of testing us. Just when things seemed to be falling into place, my mom fell ill. It hit us like a ton of bricks. The woman who had fought so hard to provide us was now battling a formidable enemy. It was a devastating blow, and it turned our lives upside down. For months, I fought alongside my mom, clinging to the hope that she would recover. We did everything we could and explored every possible treatment option, but sometimes fate has its own plans. One fateful day, my mom passed away, leaving behind a void that would never be filled. As the only child, I was left to navigate the overwhelming aftermath of her death alone. Amidst the grief, I discovered that she had given her house to me. It was her final gift, a symbol of her love and the life we had built together. Stepping into that house and knowing it was now mine felt like stepping into her embrace. It was the place where we shared laughter, tears, and precious memories. But what stung the most was that neither Carl nor his new wife, Rita, bothered to attend my mom's funeral. It was as if he had erased her from his life, as if she had never mattered to him at all. That callous indifference fueled a burning anger within me. How could they be so heartless? How could my father not consider how awful everything was for me? Months had passed, and the wound of my mom's absence remained raw. I tried to find solace in memories and the support of friends, but bitterness lingered. The house she gave me, as beautiful as it was ridden with bittersweet nostalgia. I tried to rehabilitate myself in the home, learning to live peacefully with the memories that haunted me, and I began making this new house my own. Slowly but surely, things were getting better day by day at least. And then, one day, out of the blue, Carl showed up at my doorstep. It had been several months since my mom's funeral, and he dared to waltz into my life as if nothing had happened. I opened the door, my eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of surprise in his gaze, perhaps seeing the pain and resentment etched on my face. He tried to smile, but it faltered. We stood there in uncomfortable silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. My anger and disappointment simmered beneath the surface, threatening to spill over until he finally said, sheepishly, "Hey, Freddie, can we talk?" I stared at Carl, his presence in my house stirring up a whirlwind of emotions within me. He greeted me with an apologetic tone, but it felt disingenuous. I could see right through his feeble attempts to bridge the chasm that had formed between us over the years. "Spare me the act, Carl. I'm not buying into your pathetic apologies. You walked out on us and left us struggling while you enjoyed a life of luxury, and now you dare to show up here like nothing happened?" Carl's face flushed with anger, transitioning from guilt to a defensive posture. "You need to show me some respect, Freddie." Respect? I couldn't help but scoff. Respect had to be earned, and he had lost all of it the day he abandoned our family for his desires. Respect is something you earn, Carl. You can't demand it after all the pain you've caused. You made a choice to prioritize your own selfish needs over your family. As our tense exchange continued, I noticed a familiar figure approaching from the street where his car was parked. It was Rita. stepping out of the luxurious car that reeked of opulence. Seeing her only fueled my resentment, reminding me of how my father consistently chose a life of extravagance over the well-being of his flesh and blood. She finally arrived at the doorstep and I said, "And what brings you here, Rita? You two didn't even have the decency to show up to my mom's funeral, but you're here now, huh?" "We were busy. We had other commitments, Freddie." Her feeble excuse only further infuriated me. Busy and other commitments were poor justifications for their absence at my mom's funeral. It spoke volumes about their disregard for her memory and our family. Anger and frustration surged as I gazed at them standing before me. They hadn't changed. They were still the same self-absorbed individuals who flaunted their wealth all around town, indulging in endless hedonism. Their presence in my house, pretending as if nothing had happened, fueled the fire of resentment burning within me. I finally asked them, "What the hell do you two want from me? Haven't you done enough to cause me pain?" "Look, Freddie, we need to talk. The truth is, things aren't as glamorous for us as they seem on social media. We're struggling, even to the point of selling that Aston Martin you see outside just to scrape together some money for something very important." Rita, who had been fairly silent until now, nervously removed her coat, revealing a protruding belly, indicating she was maybe 3 months pregnant. Shock coursed through me, mixed with the rage that had been building up. "Are you telling me that you impregnated someone young enough to be my sister? What kind of sick joke is this? You're way too old to be doing this type of irresponsible crap." Carl, now fighting back, unleashed a series of hurtful remarks, hitting below the belt. His words left me stunned, unable to comprehend how my father could be so callous. "You want to talk to me like I'm some stupid kid? You think I'm you? That's why I left you and your mom, because I couldn't stand to be around an idiot like yourself. You're worthless and hopeless and useless. I didn't do anything wrong or illegal, so shut your trap." Even Rita seemed to disapprove of the berating I received. I was just standing there, refusing to believe that this man had just spoken to me in this way, in my home. "Get out." "Excuse me?" "Get out before I call the cops. Get off my property." "Actually, speaking of that, that's why we're here." "What do you mean?" "I've decided that I have to kick you out of this house, Fred. It's the only way." As if I wasn't already fuming, I was now seething with rage. I was probably foaming at the mouth because Rita looked like she just saw a rabid animal and was clutching her belly protectively. "You're an idiot, Carl. This house was given to me by my mother, the woman you abandoned. You think you can just waltz in here and take it away over my dead body? You think you're entitled to this house? Well, think again, Freddie. We're kicking you out because we need a bigger and better space to raise our growing family." "What about that ridiculous condo you live in, huh?" "Come on, Freddie. You know that was no place to raise a child. And besides, we have to downsize due to the financial troubles your father mentioned. This blue Suburban is perfect for us. Right in the budget and perfect for raising a growing family. We won't be as extravagant, but we'll live a nice life." His words were like daggers, penetrating deep into my wounded heart. The audacity of his plan and the thought of him pushing me aside for a new family fueled the fire of anger within me. How could he want to play house now, after leaving us just a couple of years ago? He's insane. "You think I'll just leave? My name is on the deed, Carl. This house is legally mine, and you can't take it away." "Are you sure about that, Freddie? You underestimate my connections. I happen to know that county clerk quite well. We play golf together, you know. A simple phone call and your name on that title deed could just magically disappear." The audacity of his threat sent a higher surge of anger coursing through my veins. How dare he use his connections to manipulate the system and rob me of what was rightfully mine? You're willing to stoop that low? To use your corrupt practices to steal this house from me? You're no better than a common criminal. My voice thundered, the force behind my words pushing them back, forcing them to confront the consequences of their actions. They stood there, momentarily taken aback by the sheer intensity of my anger. But as the realization of their defeat began to sink in, their demeanor shifted. Carl and Rita exchanged uneasy glances, their expressions revealing a flicker of fear. They knew they had underestimated my determination to protect what was mine and my mother's. With a final burst of courage, I yelled at them with every ounce of strength I had left, demanding that they leave my property immediately. Their faces paled and they finally turned on their heels, retreating from the house they had so audaciously tried to claim. Even though he was fearful, Carl made it a point to continue to threaten me with all the ways he was going to ruin me. You're going to be sorry for not cooperating, Fred. I tried being nice, but I can see that you don't want that. Just wait, your day is coming. You'll be licking the bottom of people's shoes when I'm done with you. As the door slammed shut behind them, I was left standing there, my heart pounding in my chest, a mix of anger, frustration, and determination fueling my every breath. I knew that this battle was far from over. In the solitude that followed, a sense of frantic urgency settled over me. I was aware of the power and influence my father possessed and was far greater than my own. His connections and his desire to bend the rules posed a formidable threat to my dreams of holding on to this house. I understood the uphill battle I faced. It wasn't just a fight for a physical space, it was a battle against the injustices of a system that favored the privileged and the well-connected. But I wasn't willing to surrender. I would fight tooth and nail to protect the legacy my mother had left me. The house represented not just bricks and mortar, but the memories, love, and sacrifices she had made for us. It was a symbol of my identity and moving towards freedom. With renewed determination, I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the arduous journey ahead. The fight for justice had just begun. Weeks had passed since that fateful confrontation, but the storm was far from over. Carl, relentless in his pursuit of control, continued to bombard me with hateful messages and threats. I chose to ignore them, recognizing their venomous intent. Instead, I focused my energy on gathering evidence, documenting every interaction, and preserving every word from his texts. These would serve as my ammunition, my armor, when I finally took the battle to the higher-ups. I embarked on a journey to the county clerk's office one day. This was the lion's den, the very heart of the corruption that threatened to rob me of my inheritance. But I refused to be intimidated. I had to face the man who had the power to make my father's deceitful plan a reality. As I entered the county clerk's office, my heart pounded in my chest, a mix of anxiety and determination coursing through my veins. I approached the clerk's desk, where a middle-aged man with tired eyes looked up at me, seemingly unfazed by my presence. "Excuse me, sir. I'd like to speak with you about a matter of great importance." The county clerk regarded me with a mix of curiosity and skepticism, his gaze scrutinizing my appearance. "What can I do for you?" Summoning every ounce of courage, I launched into my plea, the words pouring out of me like a torrential downpour. I shared my story, recounting the struggles my mother and I had endured, and the abandonment we had suffered at the hands of Carl, his supposed golf buddy. I spoke of Carl's absence at my mother's funeral, and I showed him the threats that continued to plague my existence, as well as the fear that consumed me. As the county clerk listened, a change seemed to come over his face. The mask of indifference dissolved, replaced by a look of genuine concern. "Please, sir, I beg you to understand the truth. Carl has manipulated the situation, downplaying his role in our suffering. I know that he's been trying to convince you to change the title deed, but I implore you to see through his deception and not allow him to take what rightfully belongs to me. I'm all alone, and I need all the help I can get." The county clerk's eyes softened, reflecting a glimmer of sympathy that I hadn't expected. He leaned back in his chair, taking a moment to absorb the gravity of my words. I had no idea. I have a son who's about your age, you know. I simply couldn't imagine what you're going through. I had no idea that this was a true story. Carl always presented himself as the victim. He was saying that you're a spoiled brat and he wanted to teach you a lesson, but his words felt off to me. Maybe that's why I was so hesitant when he called me in for his favor. I knew that something was up, but I didn't know it was this bad. His words were like a balm to my wounded soul, a confirmation that my pleas hadn't fallen on deaf ears. At that moment, I sensed a flicker of hope, a belief that justice could prevail. "Thank you for listening, sir. Your understanding means more to me than words can express. I only ask that you consider the truth behind the facade Carl has crafted." The county clerk nodded, his expression resolute. "Listen, I'll do what's right. I'm so sorry that all of this happened, but if I do this for you, you gotta ensure that you won't tell anyone about me considering changing the title deed as a favor for a friend. I like helping my friends out, and sometimes it isn't very legal. So if you tell anyone, be rest assured that I will find you and deal with you myself." I gulped, terrified by the man before me. "Honestly, sir, I could care less if you're not doing everything by the books. I just want to make sure that my house is mine, and it will forever remain mine, without my father's control or influence." "Then consider it done. I've heard your story, boy, and you seem to have gone through a lot. You won't even have to question the house's ownership again." Leaving the county clerk's office that day, a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Though the battle was far from won, I held on to a glimmer of hope that justice would prevail. With the truth finally exposed, my chances of reclaiming what was rightfully mine grew stronger. I made my way to my stupid father's house. I saw from the large windows that the house practically looked empty. All of the fancy furniture that they once had was now gone, presumably sold so that they can prepare for the baby. Finally, after ringing the doorbell for what seemed like hours, Carl came up to the door and opened it. He looked terrible. He looked like he hadn't slept or showered in days. And seeing my face only made his mood worse. "What the hell do you want?" "Well, Carl, I just came to tell you something. I'm keeping the house, and there's no way that you're gonna kick me out, so you better stop trying." "Like hell you are. That's my house. I'm your father, and I say so." "You're a cockroach. You're not my father." "Yeah? Well, let's see what the county clerk has to say about all that. I told you that I can get whatever I want." I proceeded to tell him what transpired earlier, and as I got deeper and deeper into the story, Carl's face twisted more and more into shock and horror as he saw his plan unraveling at the seams. "And he said that he'd look into it and ensure that the house is mine, because guess what? I have the documents right here." I began laughing, celebrating my hard-earned victory, and I showed him the documents, the title deed stamped with all of the approving bodies, as well as my name and my signature indicating that the house is mine. Carl couldn't stop stammering and tripping over his words. He began to look completely defeated. "Well, now I can't expose that bastard for wanting to help me out because I'll also get in trouble. Looks like you and Rita have a lot of house hunting to do. Actually, she's going to leave me." "What? Why? What happened?" "She saw that I wasn't getting your house fast enough. So this morning she told me that if our names weren't on the title deed by the end of the week, she'd leave me. And now that you've told me all about this, she'll leave me for sure." "Damn, sucks to be you then." "Freddie, please let me live with you now. I can't be here anymore. Everything is too overwhelming. I haven't slept. I haven't eaten. Rita is driving me crazy with her ultimatums. I've been so stressed out since the friend that was supposed to help me wasn't responding to my messages. He kept beating around the bush. And after your stunt today... Stunt? Yes, your stunt. How could you be so selfish? I told you that we were struggling. You should have helped me. You hopeless and inconsiderate bastard. How dare you talk to me like this, acting as if I owe you something, when all you did was tear me down? It's crazy. You're 100 years old and you still act like a child. If you think I'm letting you stay with me, you got another thing coming. Check in at the homeless shelter. I think they have available spaces. Freddie, please. She's going to leave me and she's going to take everything. I need a place to stay. I'm begging you. I don't care. You're nothing to me. I hope you get everything you deserve. You think you could step all over people and act the way you do? Ever heard of this thing called karma? You're getting what's coming to you, Carl. I just pray that God lets me watch as your life goes to ruins. I didn't quite figure out what happened when Rita divorced Carl and took a lot of his money, but I do know that he began to look worse and worse, as well as develop the alcohol addiction. She must have drained him dry and left him hopeless. Word had got out that he was quite the sly and conniving person, willing to be corrupt whenever it benefited him, and let me tell you, that eventually bit him in the behind as he became somewhat of a social pariah. Don't get me wrong, he seems to be doing decent. He's holing up in a hotel somewhere trying to figure out his next move, but I know one thing, he will never face me with the same anger and entitlement he once did. He knows I'm not a kid anymore, and I have some skin in the game. I'm willing to fight for anything that my mother left behind, and if he's stupid enough to try me again, I'll make sure that he'll always stay on the ground. Hello, my name is Lyra, and I'm 33 years old. I'm about to tell you a story that has taken me a long time to articulate and share. As I reflect on the past, the memories of my tumultuous relationship with Dorian, my now ex-husband, flood my mind. It's difficult to put into words the pain and emotional turmoil I endured during those years of fruitless marriage. But I'm ready to share my story in the hopes that it will bring healing and closure to anyone who might need to hear a story like this. A few years ago, my world was turned upside down when I found out I was pregnant. It should have been a joyful time filled with anticipation and excitement. Instead, it was marked by stress and anxiety, mostly caused by Dorian's emotionally abusive behavior. The man I thought would be my rock and support system seemed more interested in his career than in our growing family. Ironically, Dorian worked as the CEO of a prominent family counseling center, preaching about the importance of family values and support. It was disheartening to witness his hypocrisy as he neglected his own family. He was so focused on his professional success that he disregarded my emotional needs and well-being. The toll of his abuse became evident during my pregnancy. The constant stress and emotional turmoil took a physical toll on me, leading to complications and early labor. It was a terrifying experience, and I desperately needed his support and care during such a vulnerable time. Instead, he remained distant and preoccupied with his own pursuits. I held on to hope, believing that the arrival of our son would bring us closer together, and it would awaken a sense of responsibility and love in Dorian. But my hopes were shattered as he continued to prioritize his career over our family. It felt like I was drowning in a sea of loneliness and neglect. I yearned for a partner who would be there for me, who would share the joys and burdens of parenthood. Instead, I was left to navigate the challenges of motherhood on my own. The sleepless nights, the constant worry, and the overwhelming responsibilities weighed heavily on my shoulders. I obviously complained telling Dorian that I needed more support, but all he'd do is yell at me and threaten to make my life worse if I continued to bother him about useless matters. Dorian, do you find your career more fruitful than our relationship? Yes, Lyra, my career brings me fulfillment and success. Unlike you, it doesn't stress me out with useless matters. Useless? Do you think taking care of your son is useless? Don't speak to me that way. I told you I'm busy. Now get out of my office. But I can't handle taking care of Henry all on my own. He needs his father. I have better things to do than babysit. I have a career to focus on, Lyra. How can you work so hard for a company that prioritizes family values, yet fail to prioritize our own family? How dare you question me? You will regret saying that, Lyra. I'll make sure of it. Honestly, Dorian, do your worst. I'm sick of your attitude and I'm done with you. Maybe I should divorce you and bring your happy-go-lucky family values down with me. Dorian never liked it when I threatened him with divorce. It would be bad for business, as he would put it. So saying this made him very angry, and surely enough, he'd always make me pay for it with more verbal and emotional abuse. Months passed and Henry grew up with little presence of his father. Dorian's absence in his life became more pronounced with each passing day. As much as it was extremely difficult, I was determined to provide a loving and stable environment for Henry, choosing to shoulder the responsibility of raising him alone. Henry's first birthday had come around, and when I tell you this man deserves an Oscar for his performance, you have to believe me. When family and friends came over to celebrate, he made sure to plaster on the fakest smile, acting as though being the best dad ever was his forte. In addition to our guests being present, Dorian had invited some people to publicize this momentous occasion for his place of work. He said that it would be good for his brand as a loving father and husband, which couldn't be further from the truth. Even though I was sick of his duplicity, I was glad that I at least had some help. But as everyone will tell you, one thing that children don't do is lie. They will not hesitate to show you how they truly feel about you, and my little Henry was no exception. Whenever Dorian tried to hold Henry for the cameras, he'd cry and scream his little head off, only being calmed down when soothed by me and some other family members. People thought it was quite odd that Henry would cry bloody murder whenever his loving and present father would try to hold him. But Dorian awkwardly brushed it off by saying things like, "Must be the cologne I'm wearing," or "I'm starting to think that the Oedipus complex is kicking in." Nonetheless, the press publicity that he hired were recording everything as was requested. But I overheard him tell them not to post all of the posts and pictures that made him look like a bad father, reassuring them that Henry was probably fussy and colicky. It was jarring for someone like me who knew the extent of Dorian's horridness being coated in fake smiles and laughter. It was like I was in a horror movie. Although Henry's first birthday could have been better, I was glad that things ended smoothly in the end. I mean, with a father like Dorian, a half-decent party was the best that you'd get. No amount of fakeness and duplicitousness could cover up all of the ugliness that Dorian was hiding beneath. Even though he did a good job at acting, trust me when I say that the truth will always come to light. And that's exactly what happened. Not long after Henry's birthday, I was presented with shocking news from my dear husband. Dorian dropped the bombshell on me one evening. He casually mentioned that he was planning a family trip to Mexico. My heart sank as the reality of the situation hit me. How could he even think of leaving when I had just started to resume work and needed his support, now more than ever in raising Henry. Are you serious, Dorian? What is it now, Lyra? I'm tired of you. I can't handle everything on my own. Going on a trip now is the last thing I need. I just started going back to work. I can't go on vacation. Who said you'd be going on the trip? This is for me and my brothers. Wow, so you weren't even considering me in this family trip of yours? What's the issue? Just now, you just said that you wouldn't be able to make it anyway, so everything works out. No, Dorian. Regardless of whether you're going on vacation or not, I still need help with Henry. You can't go on that trip. Dorian's cold gaze met mine. I'm going on this trip, whether you like it or not. Stop pestering me. His dismissive words pierced through me like daggers. The man I once loved seemed unrecognizable, consumed by his own selfish desires. I couldn't fathom how he could prioritize a vacation over a family's well-being. Why did we even have a baby together if you were going to act like this? I was sobbing at that point, unable to fathom this behavior. We made a commitment, Dorian. We agreed to bring a child into this world. Dorian's voice turned icy as he sneered. I only had the baby to keep up appearances. If I'd known that you'd be this pissy about it, I wouldn't have had a kid. It's a burden I regret every day. His words hit me like a punch to the gut. The man standing before me was no longer the person I fell in love with. I married a monster, someone who cared more about his own image than the happiness and stability of our family. Unable to bear the weight of my shattered dreams and broken heart, I sobbed uncontrollably. The realization that I had married someone so callous and cruel overwhelmed me. How had I been so blind? Dorian's final words cut through the silence, fueling the fire of my despair. When I come back, I expect to find a wife who is docile and obedient. No more of this nonsense. I didn't know it then, but that night, a newfound strength rose within me. Despite the pain and heartache, I knew I had to protect myself and Henry from this toxic individual. I made a silent vow to rise above his expectations and reclaim my independence. As Dorian embarked on his trip to Mexico, I naively hoped that his absence would bring some relief from his constant abuse. Little did I know that the torment would continue, albeit in a different form. It started with a notification on my phone several hours after he left. Unusual transactions and exorbitant amounts began appearing on my credit card statement. Panic surged through me as I realized that Dorian was using my card to fund their lavish vacation. How could he stoop so low? I immediately dialed Dorian's number, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. What the hell is going on, Dorian? Why are you charging everything on my credit card? His response dripped with malicious satisfaction. Consider it punishment for all the lip you've been giving me lately. You'll literally pay for your defiance. Fury coursed through my veins. How dare he exploit my finances as a means of control? Go to hell, Dorian. In his rage, Dorian retaliated. Oh, you want to act tough now? Let me tell you something, darling. The only reason why you're acting like this is because I'm not there to teach you a lesson. I'll spend so much money that I'll max out your credit card. You'll regret ever crossing me. Tired of his abuse and threats, a fire ignited within me. I refused to be his victim any longer. Go ahead, Dorian, do your worst, because I promise you, I will ruin your life just as you've ruined mine. With renewed determination, I took the first step towards freeing myself from this nightmare. I cut the call and proceeded to block him so that I wouldn't get deterred from my mission. That very day, I was in the works of hiring a skilled lawyer recommended to me by a close friend and initiated divorce proceedings. Thankfully, it didn't take long to schedule a meeting a couple of days later. After explaining my horrid story to him, my lawyer advised me to gather as much evidence as possible to expose Dorian's true nature and to maximize my benefits from the awaiting divorce settlement. I meticulously combed through the security camera footage in our home, capturing instances of his aggression and cruelty. I also gathered text messages and voicemails that showcased his abusive behavior, leaving a trail of evidence that would shatter his carefully constructed facade. But I didn't stop there. I reached out to the publicity team Dorian had hired for Henry's birthday party. I pleaded with them to provide me with the pictures and footage of Dorian and Henry, demonstrating that even his own son felt unsafe and uncomfortable in his presence. Thankfully, after hearing and sympathizing with my story, they complied. They helped me out tremendously, sending me all of the evidence I wanted and wished me well on my journey for justice and reparations. The pieces were slowly coming together. With the help of some friends who had told me to leave this man long ago, I managed to finish my investigation within the week, all the while continuously documenting the frivolous charges he would make on my credit card as further evidence of his trying to control and abuse me. I didn't care to disable the credit card because I knew that I would make the money back, and more, from the divorce. I let him think he was hurting me just so that I could hurt him much more in the end. The evidence I accumulated would serve as a powerful weapon in this battle for justice. No longer would I allow Dorian's manipulation and abuse to dictate my life. A week had gone by, and I knew that I had to work quickly because in another week, Dorian would be back from his trip. I wanted to leave him a lovely surprise when he came back home. He tried contacting me in several other ways, telling me to unblock him or else. He even went as far as to email me. Little did he know that I would only add it to the roster of evidence against him because even though he'd reach out, he'd never failed to leave a trail of threats behind. Even though the threats were growing in ferocity and intensity, I was steadfast in my quest for justice. If ever there was a time to leave, surely it was now, when he wasn't even in the country. I was scared, that much was true, but I was even more terrified of what would happen if I would stay with him, especially after ignoring him for the entirety of his trip. I knew that there was no turning back. I had to leave, and I had to leave him for good. I became consumed with the pursuit of my freedom, deciding to move Henry and me out, as well as all of my belongings, to stay with a close friend of mine. Dorian's trip to Mexico became the catalyst for my liberation. His attempts to break me only fueled my determination to break free from his toxic grip. The storm was brewing, and I was ready to unleash its fury. My determination grew stronger, fueled by the love I had for myself and Henry. Together, we would rise above the darkness and rebuild our lives on a foundation of strength and resilience. A total of 12 days had gone by ever since he'd left, and I was extremely proud of all my progress. I had managed to find a lawyer, begin building a case, and move out of that toxic environment. I knew that I couldn't have done it without the help of my friends and family. Without their help and support, I definitely wouldn't have been able to move out and move on so quickly. As I was finalizing moving out and collecting the last of my belongings, I got a call from one of Dorian's brothers. Knowing that it was probably Dorian himself seeking to reach out after ignoring him for so long. "Hello? Georgia, I'm sick of this insolence." "Why are you calling me? I don't want to speak with you." "Are you still up to your childish antics? Having a baby messed up your head, huh?" What do you want? I just wanted to let you know, since you insist on not unblocking me, that when I and the boys come back from our vacation, we'll be headed home for a celebration. So you better prepare some nice food for us. Ha! You're hilarious if you think I'm going to do all of that for you and your brothers. I have a baby to take care of. I'll let you get all of your childishness out of your system before we return, because it's not just me and my brothers coming back. I've invited over some important shareholders of the company, so everything needs to be prepared for them. Have the food ready and you better dress up nice. We'll be coming back early in the morning, so everything better be ready by then. I was fuming. How could he speak to me in such a way? Hearing him speak now made me realize how foolish I'd been this entire time. Taking off those rose-tinted glasses made me realize just how ugly this man was. He was a monster, a demon, and I was disgusted to know that I'd been with him this entire time. Instead of showcasing my newfound strength and determination by lashing out at him, I paused and took a deep breath. Okay, Dorian, don't you worry. You and your brothers and your superiors are all going to be shocked by what I have in store for you. That's the spirit. That's the type of wife I want. Okay, talk later. I'll text you a list of all the dietary restrictions and stuff. I hung up the call and proceeded to make my way out of the door, leaving behind the divorce papers on the kitchen counter as well as my ring. I took the last of my belongings and left the home, saying goodbye to a life that had plagued me for so long. Dorian's return from his lavish trip to Mexico 2 days later was met with a scene that left him dumbfounded and embarrassed. I'm sure when he stepped through the front door, his eyes widened in shock to find the house eerily quiet and half empty. The absence of his wife and child, coupled with the conspicuous presence of divorce papers on the kitchen counter, must have left him reeling in disbelief. Oh, how I wished I could have witnessed the complete shock and horror etched across his face. I relished the thought of him realizing that his reign of control and manipulation had crumbled beneath the weight of my determination. But alas, I was bombarded with calls from his 5 brothers and a seething Dorian himself, his anger palpable through the phone. As I reluctantly answered the call, Dorian's voice exploded with rage. He demanded an explanation for everything, reiterating that these important shareholders were with him and they were just as confused as he was. And so I calmly informed him that I was divorcing him, that the walls of his deceit were closing in, and that he would be lucky if he could ever comfortably show his face in this town again. Confusion and desperation laced his voice as he demanded clarification. I challenged him to check the news, and surely enough, as was planned, the local tabloids splashed his scandalous downfall across their front pages. The man who touted family values, the leader of a company built on ideals of love and support, stood exposed as a hypocrite. His true nature laid bare for all to see. With the help of the very publicists he had hired for our son's birthday, I orchestrated a campaign to reveal the toxic truth of our relationship, spreading the news far and wide through social media and word of mouth. Dorian's swift downfall was not limited to public humiliation alone. The repercussions of his actions rippled through his professional life. His superiors, once impressed by his charm and seemingly perfect family life, saw through this facade. They deemed him an embarrassment, a stain on their reputation, and swiftly terminated his employment. One of his former superiors, in a scathing remark, stated that keeping Dorian on the job would be bad for business, exposing him as an anomaly, a contradiction to everything their company stood for. Stripped of his title, reputation, and social standing, Dorian became a pariah in the eyes of the community. The man who once held his head high, respected and admired, was now reduced to a pitiful figure, desperately trying to salvage what little remained of his shattered life. As for me, I reveled in the knowledge that my escape from his clutches was imminent. The divorce proceedings were underway, and with the weight of evidence and the support of my legal team, I knew I stood on solid ground. Dorian's desperate attempts to plead for my return played out like a broken record. Each plea met with resolute rejection. He would call, his voice laced with remorse, begging me to reconsider, and each time I stood my ground, my voice firm and unwavering. "Lyra, please, I'm begging you to come back to me. I've realized my mistakes and I'm truly remorseful. Our family is worth fighting for." "Dorian, there's no way I would ever entertain the idea of being with you again. Having Henry opened my eyes to what a loving, supportive partnership should be like. We both deserve better than the toxic relationship you gave us." "But Lyra, I'm nothing without you. I've lost everything and I can't bear the thought of living without you. And I'll learn to love Henry. I swear I'll do anything." "That's not my concern anymore, Dorian. This is the bed you made, and now you have to lie in it." Dorian's pitiful pleas washed over me, but I remained steadfast in my resolve. The scars of his emotional abuse ran deep, and no amount of remorse could erase the pain I had endured. I had found strength in the realization that I deserved happiness and a life free from his toxicity. In the face of his desperate pleas, I held my ground, unwavering in my decision to forge a new path. The road ahead would be challenging, but I knew I possessed the strength and resilience to rebuild my life, leaving behind the shadows of a broken marriage. Dorian would have to face the consequences of his actions, and as the divorce proceedings loomed, he would learn that there are no shortcuts to redemption when a heart has been shattered.